Oh, okay. I'm back. Here I am. Despite the nice weather today, I've somehow managed to make this the hottest room in the house, despite having not yet used any of the cooking implements. So that's exciting. So it's a little warm in here. Um, I don't want to open that window because we'll get noise. Um, so I guess I'm gonna just make do. I may have to rig up a fan coming out of the corner that nobody can see just to keep some circulation in here. Um, so the plan for today, I it was one of those days where I had no plan. This morning I had no plan. Um, I went out to the store, uh, see what they got, see if anything jumped out at me. I guess they had a bunch of ground beef that nobody bought because it was a bunch of ground beef in the bargain bunker at uh, use it or lose it point. So I grabbed a couple of those. Here's the plan. Uh, Several weeks ago at this point, I made off show ground beef bulgogi. It was really good. It was super easy. It was super quick. It came out perfectly. It was delicious. I posted a picture of it. Somebody bounced back and asked me for a recipe. Well, I didn't have a recipe. I had just kind of wung my way through it. So I tried making it again because I wanted to make a and I recorded it. I didn't do it live, but I had OBS recording. Um, and I messed it up. I made it the second time. I thought I made it exactly the same way while I was recording. I was talking through. I was writing stuff down, and it came out not good. Like clearly had done something wrong. Um, which I don't know how because it's such an easy recipe. But also, I still don't have the recipe or a video or anything to give somebody who wants to know how to do it. So I picked up some bargain ground beef, and I'm going to make it multiple times today and jot down notes. In theory, we'll get it right. And then, because that's going to be too much, first time I made it, I realized how big of a recipe it actually was using a full packet of ground beef. So I'm actually going to divide it out and see if I can make single serves as well. But then I'm going to have extra. So I don't know, I've got those spring roll wrappers in there. Maybe we'll make spring rolls. I've got some rice. I'm going to have to make some rice regardless. I've got some sushi nori in there. Maybe we'll make some rolls. We'll do something with it after I've gotten a couple batches that I'm happy with. Um, I'm not recording this one. I actually maybe I should. You know what? Let's actually start recording this one. Well, no, I don't have an. Do that next time. We'll figure that out. We'll figure that out later. Um, I actually need to. Here, let me pop you back over to the pre-show screen. I'm going to walk out the room for a moment here. I need to go grab a notepad to jot my notes down on if I'm going to be jotting down notes as I go. Uh, since we're actually going with a trying to turn a one of my winging it episodes into a actual recipe that someone else could follow. Uh, Not with you anymore. We're out of the pre-show. We're into the main show. Uh, so that's the plan. There's nobody here yet, so I'm talking to myself. I'm going to take this opportunity while we're talking to myself to wash some rice over there by the sink. I'm going to get the rice out of the back corner here. since I'm gonna want rice either way. Oh, funny thing about rice, if you'll remember, I did Indian style rice for the curry I made, and I loved it, and it came out perfectly. Well, I tried making that again, and while the rice came out well, it boiled over. It unexpectedly boiled over. That's right. I always forget that light just absolutely blinds everyone. I need like a shade hood so it only lights up the sink. That'd be ideal. So I'm going to do a generous amount of rice because you can never have too much rice. You'll find some way to use the extra rice. Oh, that was the other thing about the Indian style, the Indian cooked rice. It held up much better in leftovers. Uh, you know the way rice goes kind of stiff after it's been sitting. The starches start to recrystallize, and it doesn't re-dry out. It like gets stiff. I think is the yeah like it's starting to stale. I guess. Uh, well, the rice that was boiled like pasta didn't do that. I mean, I'm sure it would have eventually, but just going by next day, it was still like really nice separate grains. They were nice and tender. So I'm actually going to do it that method again. See if I, but I'm going to rinse it. That's the thing I didn't do. I used a smaller pot because I was just making one little dose for myself, and I think the pot was too small because it does draw a lot of the starch out into the cooking water, which you then pour away. But I'm going to give this one a pre-rinse as well, just because rice is quite starchy, and I feel like there was enough that it was causing a foam up. Uh, so we're doing both. We're both rinsing the rice and boiling the rice to, I guess, see what happens. If it's the best ever rice, or if it's ruined if you do both things to it. Because boiling your rice. Oh, I got this light on again. Time I turn this light on over here, it seems so dark. And I need like a lamp just off the side there that shines over towards the sink here. So I've seen a reaction video of one YouTube chef reacting to another YouTube chef who's saying, "You boil your rice like pasta and drain it off? It's blasphemy. It's all wrong." As if there's only one proper way to make rice. Uh, and frankly, rinsing rice at all is quite uncommon in Western cooking. Uh, like, you would never have developed the risotto if you constantly rinsed your rice. Uh, European style cooking, I think, tends towards just using the rice as it is. So you get different dishes. Uh, that's pretty good. And I'm not going for a super clear water since we are going to be boiling it in a pot as well. Um, let's. So I don't have a camera by the sink, so I can't show that part off. There's no way for me to show that part off. We only have so many angles. But let's get, now the pot I want to use actually was just washed this morning, so it's over here in the drying rack area. I gotta extract it real quick. That guy, it's my large stainless pot. It's my largest, like, proper high-sided pot for boiling stuff. I'm just gonna put a load of water in there and some salt. Uh, well, I also need to remember to bring the temperature down once it's got the rice in there. So I think that might have also been part of it. I wasn't paying super close attention. I just kind of put the rice in there and turned away to do something else. And it, you know, you're facing one way and you hear whoosh when the pot boils over and all the drippings hit the burner and sizzle up real quick. Uh, while that is heating up, I am going to take this opportunity to put some things away, since I did a bunch of dishes just this morning from some of our other projects and just incidental cooking. I do have to cook when I'm not doing a show as well. Someone told me that I should just stream every dinner I make. Just why not? See what happens. Um, it's I need a better place for lids. Why is it that there's no good place in a standard kitchen to keep pot lids? You know, like I've seen specialty items, like a lid rack that you got to buy separately, and you got to find a place to put it. But like, it's not a feature of a kitchen that they have a place to keep your pot lids. All right, there was a. Nope, he's still there. Okay, well, there was a little bug, probably going for the water in my drying rack, rinsing down the sink. So yeah, pot lids. I'm talking about pot lids. I don't have a place to put pot lids. My pot lids are in the top. You can't see the cupboard. Um, they're in my top cupboard behind all of my like sheet pans and stuff. Uh, Sort of roughly held in place by the fact that there's a bunch of sheet pans in front of them. But they keep wanting to roll around whenever I get them, and they catch on each other pretty much every time I try to get them in or out of there. So, not a it's not a solution. It's really not a very good solution. I suppose that rice could be on the near burner because I'm not too scuffed about getting this done in a timely manner here because, frankly, the main event, the Bulgogi, is just real simple and quick. Um, I'm just taking enough time to get stuff ready here and let maybe a couple people trickle in since there's still nobody here. And I can make it more than one time because I got plenty of time for it and plenty of ingredients for it. Heck, we could. There's going to be leftovers of this because there's no way I'm going to make. I'm going to eat what I make today. Uh, so this is the rinsed rice, just waiting in the wings. Since we're still waiting for people to show up, I'm going to wash the couple of dishes I've got here from lunch. Uh, Again, just to that one might need a moment to soak. Uh, I had leftovers for lunch. I had some leftover mapo tofu on ramen over ramen noodles because ramen noodles are easier than rice, and I was planning on having rice this evening. Um, but if you don't wash out the pot you did the noodles in right away, they get a little dried on the sides, and then you got to rehydrate them to get them to let go. So I believe that's where we are. Just a quick rehydrate of the slightly stuck on noodles. Um, I always keep a lot of instant ramen noodles, the cheapest brand I can get on hand, and I just pitch the flavor packets. Um, I use them as a base for lots of things as a quick, because the noodle, like the instant ramen, is famously very high in salt, um, but it's all in the flavor powders. The noodles themselves are not heavily salted; they're just noodles. Um, so I find them a very quick and convenient option for because they boil in what 3 minutes, somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes, depending on the brand. They're super consistent. They're pre-portioned, and then you could build your own dish on top of them. And since I'm just using the noodles, I typically get the cheapest option because when you buy the more expensive ones, yes, they do have better noodles. Not all of them, but some of them do have better noodles. But usually, what you're paying for is the better flavors and the better other stuff. You get the little packet of dried flaky things that rehydrates in boiling. That costs extra. You get the packet of like dehydrated bone broth or a little packet of flavored oil or all those little extra things. Those are what you're paying for. Um, so if you're not planning on using any of those, just get whatever's the cheapest one. In my area, the cheapest one is Maruchan. Um, the most basic. I honestly can barely tell the flavors apart. They claim to have a bunch of different flavors, and except for the spicy ones and the sour ones, I can't even tell them apart. Our water is boiling. You may have noticed. Yeah, get all of them out of there. Get my rinsed rice into my boiling water. Immediately drops it off of a boil because the rice was cold because I've rinsed it in cold water. We may as well take an opportunity since we're already doing some dishes here to just wash up, keep washing up. I'll have half the number of dishes I normally do at the end of one of these if I take the time and wash as I go. Normally, I'm trying to keep. Now, it's antithetical to the very notion of Twitch that I'm trying to keep these shows to a reasonable, like, watch length. Twitch wants you to go as long as possible. But I don't know. I don't have the. I guess I don't have the viewership for that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure how to turn a cooking show. I say that I do know how to turn a cooking show into a longer show, and it's have an audience that you can interact with, because then they can you can do stuff with them while, say, your bread is proving or rising. Yeah, it did foam up right away. Let's get that down to an 8. Things that take some time, or you've got a roast that's got to bake for an hour. You can do something else with. Howdy. Yes, it is hot in the kitchen. I brought that up right at the start when I was starting. This has managed to be the hottest room in the house because it's got no circulation. Um, it's got no circulation anytime. So in the winter, it's the coldest room in the house, except that I can cook stuff, and it ambient heats up the room. In the summer, the only way to cool the room down is open the door, open the window, and that lets a bunch of noise in. So it's a little warm in here right now. Yeah. Um, I was just chatting to myself because there was nobody here, and doing the rice in advance because I know I'm going to want rice at the end of this. Uh, whatever I end up doing with myself, and catching up on a few dishes that were here. So the plan today, if you see over here on the small screen, I've got Notepad. Our plan today is not just to cook a thing, but to actually do a recipe and write it down and practice it. Yes, the goal here, my goal is I told the story at the beginning. I'll tell the story again because nobody was here watching, so nobody heard it. Stories in the VOD if you want to go back. Um, I made beef bulgogi off stream and posted a picture, and somebody asked me for the recipe. So I came back in here, fired up OBS, started recording, made it again, totally screwed it up. Um, it still tasted fine, but it came out wrong. So I just scrap the video. Like, okay, I got to figure this out. Today I'm figuring it out. It doesn't take very long to make it because I'm not doing a full like marinated thing. It's a quick like cheater beef bulgogi. I'm gonna make it more than one time. I'm gonna make it multiple times to get the technique right. And we're gonna jot stuff down. I know some of the basic elements because I did it based on a reference recipe anyways. So I suppose I could have linked to the reference recipe, but now I want to get my own technique and do it right. So that's where we're coming from. I'm going to have my reference in the background. So yes, I'm making the same thing more than one time. And then once I've got it nailed down, sweating a little bit, it's hot in here. Once I've got it nailed down, then I'll make finished products out of it. The easy one is going to be a rice bowl. But I was thinking, well, I've got spring roll wrappers, I've got some nori sheets, I've got other stuff. I could potentially take this in, what will become an ingredient and make other things out of it. Who knows? Um, so yeah, that's the plan. And I was starting with rice and a little bit of time killing to get people a chance to wander on in. That is just about to foam over. That's the problem. The first time this is the Indian rice method again, where I'm boiling it in excess water and I'm going to drain it. This is another thing that I messed up. I did it perfectly the first time live when I made the curry. Just first time I've ever done it. Didn't look anything up other than basic technique. Did it perfectly. Didn't boil over. It came out wonderfully. Second time I did it, immediately boiled over. Big head of foam just rose up within a couple of minutes and just made a huge mess. I don't know what I did differently. Today, I've pre-rinsed the rice, put it in a pot with a bunch of water to boil, and it's not foaming up as badly, but it's still foaming up quite a bit. So I'm keeping an eye on it while I chit chat. Because I would like to get this technique down too, because that first day when I made the rice, it was perfect. It was the best rice I've ever made. And it was also, you couldn't see it because I didn't see that live, it was perfect the next day. It held in the fridge overnight. It didn't get like hard and stale. It stayed light and fluffy in a sealed container so it didn't dry out. But still, usually they kind of re-solidify when you chill them out. This one held at least a day at almost perfect tenderness. So I'd like to get this technique down too, because that first batch of rice was just so good, and I want to recreate it. So that's what we're doing, recipe practice today. Should also maybe provide me with a little bit more dynamic cooking, but who knows? Okay, that's not ready yet. I don't know how long this is supposed to take. First time I did it took 17 minutes, but that could have been a fluke. I don't know. So again, I'm this part we're having a little bit of a dull start because I'm just making rice. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to drain it too. I did a test with this guy. over to my main cam with this guy, because instead of using the fine mesh, because the fine mesh definitely keeps the rice in, but it's not so fun to clean. This guy is much easier to clean. So I did a test and I drained some cooked rice in this, and it works. It holds it in. I didn't lose any more than just like one or two grains, and it was nice and easy to get out too. It didn't like the other thing when it was sitting in the fine mesh. When I went to scrape it out, some of them got mashed right into the mesh. Not so with this guy. I was able to neatly scrape it out with my rice paddle. God, I stopped paying attention to this thing for a moment, and the foam is once again right up to the top. It didn't do that the first time. I don't understand what's different. I don't understand what's different about the rice. I've got it turned even further down. Now the foam is subsiding, and it's still at a boil, so I don't know. I don't know. So if you're not familiar with Bulgogi, I'll give a quick rundown of what that is. Oh, I had somebody. They wandered off. Oh well. Bulgogi is a Korean. Now I think it's normally made with like a tough piece of steak that you cut real thin. But it's beef. It's a Korean beef dish that's salty and sugary and a bit spicy and very savory, and it's super delicious. I don't know that it's terribly healthy because it's got beef, salt, sugar in it, but it's mighty delicious. Um, and I found, instead of just standing around, I should get stuff ready. Uh, Bargain bin, used today or forget about it. Ground beef, 7% fat. I'm pretty sure it was in there because it's got a little bit of a meat juice on the outside of the packaging, which is why it's been wrapped up in a second layer. But I should get that out of there, throw away the juicy packaging, get it ready to go. And I'm not presently recording this. It's just going to be up as a VOD. Um, I don't think I. First of all, I don't think I have the space to simultaneously record this whole thing. Um, it's a little bit showing a little bit of its age, but that's okay. The other one, because there's two of them, I got plenty to go around. The other one's going to go right back in the fridge. We'll get into that later when we get back to it. Oh, it's real juicy. We're going to need some paper toweling. Oftentimes, I've noticed, especially with the ground meats in the bargain thing, the ones that are in the bargain are the ones that another package has leaked on. Not that the one in the bargain bin is itself leaking, but it was near one that was leaking. And then people didn't want it because it had leak stuff on the outside. But they're perfectly fine on the inside. Uh, Rice is looking thick. So I'm going to take another taste test to see if the grains are tender and then probably drain it. And then we can move on to putting together our recipe when I can actually pay full attention to it. That's why I'm not doing it right now, is because I want to pay attention to this rice as well. Get the water out of it. Okay, nice and tender. We'll just drain it off. The other fun part about doing this way is it was explicitly directed to put it into a strainer and then leave it in the strainer for several minutes to fully drain out before you fluff it. See, we don't need that pot anymore. So that can sit there and cool off, and I can come back over here. We have our ground meat. I will move the gentleman and the tiny whisk. Tiny whisk is going to be employed for sure today. So something that happened twice, both the successful outing and the unsuccessful one, was that this is a pound of meat. A full pound is too much for one. Half of this was too much for one. I could eat it, but it was a very full meal. I kind of want to do it in thirds, but I think it might be easier to do it in quarters and do smaller doses that can then be multiplied up to make bigger. So I'm going to need my conversion table over here. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by breaking this thing into, well, I'll see. Okay. I'll start by getting out the various ingredients that go into this other than the meat. So we've got everything available. And we need, for this, soy sauce, sugar. Now I'll be using a combination of white granulated sugar and molasses to mimic brown sugar. I don't have any brown sugar. And also, brown sugar tends to just turn into a brick once you've opened it. Ginger root, garlic, green onion, uh, sesame seed. Let's see, what else? It's sesame oil. Now, I've seen versions of this that have an acid in there and versions that don't. So I could try both, see how they work differently. We need some hot chili peppers. I'll just get a bunch. This would be a good place for chili flakes if you've got those too. Fun fact, chili flakes are just these guys crushed up. They don't tell you what kind of chili are on them. I had to go searching. Turns out overwhelmingly they are just cayenne pepper that have been crushed up and like lightly toasted. Um, ginger, garlic. Yeah, I think that's all the ingredients. I think that's all the things that go into it. Oops, that was the wrong screen. So, I think breaking it into quarters might be too much. So we're gonna do halves. So I'm gonna start with half of this guy. Yeah, that's such a big. No, I'm gonna stick to my initial gun and do quarters. And our first outing, our first blush at this, I'm just going to do it exactly the way I think it's supposed to go. And then we can take notes. What works, what doesn't work. My first clove of garlic is a massive one, so I'm just going to use the one. Just peel this where you can see it. My first clove of garlic is a massive one, so we're just going to use the one. It does have a little spot on it, so I guess I'll cut into it to see if that's anything worth worrying about. Before I grate it up. No, surface blemish, nothing. Just a surface blemish. You can take it off without any concern. Get out a dish to hold my garlic. This is something I always recommend doing, is whether you're mashing it or grating it or mincing it, do your garlic first. So it has a chance to rest and develop its flavor before you slap it on the heat. If you're not mincing or mashing or grating your garlic, then that doesn't matter. It's not going to develop flavor just sitting around in one piece. But farther in advance you do this, the more time it has to develop that garlicky flavor before you introduce it to the heat and stop it in its tracks. Up to a point, I believe it stops producing around 24 hours. So packaged garlics, minces are well past the point where they've started to instead lose their potent garlickiness. But mash up the garlic in advance, give it the maximum chance to do all those good things, good garlicky things. And while it is resting in here, I can move on to all the other ingredients. We'll get everything ready. Since I'm going to use the grater more than once, I am quickly rinsing it off. Garlic is surprisingly sugary, and if you let the garlic juice dry, it becomes very sticky. So quick rinse that off, and we will prepare a larger bowl. We will prepare the sauce. This is the Bulgogi sauce. I suppose if you could buy a prepackaged Bulgogi flavoring. So for the full thing, I was using a quarter cup. So I'm going to be using an eighth of a cup, which is 2 tablespoons. Which we will start with the sugar because it's dry and grainy and water soluble. Get him over here. I thought this container was going to be good for sugar, but it's really hard to get the sugar out of it. So I think when I finish this sugar, I'm going to use this container for something else and put my sugar in an easier to access box, or an easier to access something. Okay, quarter cup of sugar. If you got brown sugar, use brown sugar here. I've got white sugar, so I will be adding some molasses to it, but I want to get the soy sauce in first, and it's 1 part sugar to 1 part soy sauce to start with. And here comes the tiny whisk. Tiny whisk needs to get this as well combined as it can. We don't want a big lump of sugar being left behind when we end up dumping this into the meat later. Now, molasses is harder to measure. On account of it being so sticky. You don't need very much molasses to mimic a brown sugar. So I'm going to go with a half teaspoon. But honestly, I'm going to eyeball a half teaspoon by pouring it next to the half teaspoon. That's more than half teaspoon. I touched the mic. Because it is so sticky, it'll be really hard to get out of this little scooper. And if you go over a little bit, it's not the end of the world. Somewhere between a half teaspoon and a teaspoon of molasses. Which, if you can see, I don't know if you can, it's formed a black secondary layer, and it needs, once again, some nice stirring. It's so strange that, to me, that brown sugar. Oh yeah, we should write these down. So, oh, dropped my half teaspoon. 1/2 pound ground beef. 2 tablespoons sugar. 2 tablespoons soy. Put a T in soy sauce for some reason. Soy sauce. Delightful handwriting. 1 clove garlic. Let's see. Sesame oil. I haven't been a huge fan of this brand of sesame oil, I have to be honest. It's not bad, but it comes in quite a small bottle, and I got it on sale, so it was worthwhile, but the regular sale price for this is pretty high. We're going to do a teaspoon of sesame oil. Sesame oil is a good flavor and an important element of the thing here. Top back on that guy. Now I could grate the ginger, but I was thinking I would mince. I would try doing a mince on the ginger. The ginger is going to go right in here, along with. Let's see, move my things out of the way here. Since I've got this nice big fresh root, I was gonna try slicing it and doing a mince instead of grating it, because I find grating ginger difficult. I'm also not going to bother peeling it. Because I've done some taste tests myself, and I can't tell the difference when there's ginger peel in a cooked dish that contains ginger. If I was eating the ginger raw, fine maybe, but once you cook it down, eh. So just gonna, and that was, I don't know, should have been measuring. You want quite a bit of ginger in this. I will, I guess I'll try to stick this into a measuring spoon to see how much I've got. Unlike garlic, uh, ginger has the flavor compounds in it already, and crushing it just releases them rather than actually developing them. And it's notably more stable, which is why ground ginger is an effective ingredient. So that's half a tablespoon of ginger. Write that down. 1/2 tips ginger fresh. 1 teaspoon sesame oil. And that's going into our sauce mix. It will extract some of its flavors into there, and it'll be cooked because we will add sauce mix to the meat down the line just a bit. This sauce is getting a little thick, which is good. We want that. Too runny, and then we have to, if it's too runny, then we have to cook off the extra liquid after we add it to the meat, which means we end up cooking the meat longer, which we don't want. I'm going to take one of these guys, snap his neck off, get my grinder out, chuck him in there, seeds and all. I've noticed that since it's warmed up and started to get a bit more humid, it's harder to grind these by hand. They aren't quite as crispy as they were in the winter when it was really dry. So keep that in mind if you're keeping your own dried peppers that you've dried yourself. I need a little scraper to get this out of here. Or should I toast this in the oil? What do you think? Should I mix the pepper into the sauce or toast it in the oil? I'm going to toast it in the oil. It's only going to be in there for a bit, but I'm going to add it to the garlic. We'll do that at the same time. So the peppers will have a more of a chance to infuse as they cook. Let's see, the green onion, our last untouched ingredient is our green onion. Well, other than our sesame seeds, but that's a garnish. I'm going to do, since I'm doing half of that, or am I doing a quarter of that? No, I'm doing half of that. Half of that. Oop. Oh, sorry, I sneezed there. Slice up a green onion, pretty small. And save a little bit of it for garnish. Most of it's going to go in with everything, but you want a nice little sprinkle of fresh ones right on top. They make it they pop. So we'll just grab a few of those. Really, like the dark green ones that are a nice like tube in the middle for garnish. And the rest of these are going to go in the pan at some point when we cook, which is now. Okay. Now, the first time I did this, my nonstick got a little scratch in it. Now, the first time I did this, I used this pan rather than a wok or the steel skillet. I used my nonstick. I'm going to attempt to use my nonstick. 1 teaspoon sesame oil, half tablespoon fresh ginger, hot pepper, combined ginger and pepper, green onion sliced. Well, I've one green onion. Hot pepper. That's because you could just use crushed. So I'm gonna call that a 1/4 teaspoon of crushed red pepper. And you know what? Last minute decision. Let's go with 8 grinds black pepper. Into the sauce. Oh, to keep the oil down. Well, I guess we'll try this the second time. I was going to say, to keep the amount of added oil down, you could use the sesame oil instead of adding it to the sauce right here as the sauteing oil. Medium heat. Medium heat and a stiff-edged spatula. I will be using my red one. And a small soft-edged spatula. I will also be using my red one. And I eyeballed that. Let's go with 1 tablespoon of cooking oil. One tablespoon neutral oil. So we're bringing that up to medium heat. Gosh, where is everybody on a Tuesday? I suppose it's the day after a holiday, so everyone's thrown off for part of the week. Um, hmm. So I should also be ready to break my meat in half, since I'm only using half of the packet. Well, that was easy to break. Okay, that's ready to go. It's literally on the spatula. So now we are once again playing the waiting game, where I wait for this this oil to heat up enough to start to be shimmery, and that was probably honestly 2 tablespoons, but I don't think you need that much. Uh, so I'm just going to add those in, and they will heat as the oil heats. So the direction here for our recipe is uh, add oil to pan, add garlic and ginger, or not ginger, garlic and hot red pepper. Saute until fragrant. Good thing I'm not publishing the notepad version of this because it's illegible. It's already bubbly. That's a good sign. I suppose you could make this recipe with like yellow onion instead of green onion. And if I was doing that, I would start the onion now. We're fragrant. We're not only fragrant, we're foamy. Um, and I'm adding half a pound of ground beef, which we are breaking up with a stiff, straight-edged spatula. And cooking until evenly browned. Now, I was just watching a cooking show by a YouTuber named Adam Ragusia, who suggested that instead of doing what I just did, you should take the whole wad of ground meat, slap it in there, and just press it down and wait until the entire bottom has become richly browned, and then proceed with breaking it up. that you get more browning by doing it that way. I have not tested it. This could have been a chance to test it, but I didn't do that. So what we're looking for in this phase of cooking is not just that the meat goes from pink to gray, but that it starts to develop little brown spots as it caramelizes. Caramelizes isn't the right word for meat. Browns, browning. Um, because the little brown spots, now if you're doing this in a nonstick, it actually would start to stick to the bottom. And then the sauce that I'm adding would be super useful for deglaze. But since I'm using a nonstick, there won't be anything stuck to the bottom. And I'm a little, because the sauce is so sugary, I'm honestly a bit afraid of not using a nonstick for this. We've got a handy second spatula to scrape the first spatula off. I'm gonna let that rest and brown a bit, and several grinds black pepper. Black pepper to taste. Black pepper to taste is the way the way you add that. I just gave it several good grinds. Um, we need the beef to cook and brown. We also need it to render out the extra fat that's in there. Now this was a pretty lean cut. This is a 7% grind. I think part of the problem with the one I messed up was that it was a bit fattier, and I didn't account for that. And it was just swimming in grease. And I tried to soak it up into a sauce by adding some starch, and it didn't work. Um, that was a hack I did while I was just cooking it the first time. Was just chucked. It was. I noticed it was a little bit of a pooling liquid, so I just chucked some cornstarch in there. Uh, and it pulled together into a nice sort of unctuous sauce. I'm not going to do that for our first outing. I'm going to see what it does if I can get it to not be problematic for our first try here. Heck, if this first one works, heck, wow, I'm already over an hour. I suppose the half hour of faffing about when nobody was watching uh, shouldn't really count towards that. There's quite a bit of liquid coming out of this, and I'm not sure at this point how much of it is water expressing out of the meat, how much of it is beef fat rendering. Um, we would like it to mostly be water. I would say when you're making this, leanest cut, leanest ground beef you can get is a good target. I don't know what the various names of your ground beefs are, but if you're grinding your own at home, go for something lean. You want a little bit of fat, but go for something on the leaner end for this. Um, so that because if there's too much fat in the pan, I'm just gonna have to spoon it off and get rid of it because I'm trying to do this without applying hacks to it right at the start. Um, So, yes, brown, write that part down. Half pound, add beef. Brown and crumble, not just brown, but you want it to crumble. And it'll actually ends up crumbling easier as it cooks, as long as you get it started crumbling by breaking up the big chunk at the beginning. Um, to the point where you can just kind of poke these little nuggets and they just fall apart. Now, because this is a nonstick pan, there is going to be the challenge of it having a hard time developing any really dark brown parts to it. But I would like to cook it until I'm confident, at least until I'm confident that the water is out of it. Because that would be the point when it would start properly browning. Um, since we're adding a bunch of water to it because there's water in soy sauce, I want to not have a ton of water to start with. And by the looks of it, a lot of the liquid that was in there was in fact water coming out of the meat, not fat rendering. So because if I push to the side, I'm not having any, well, I'm having a little bit. Okay, we've got some pooling fat now that I've forced the issue. We've got definitely some pooling fat. So I may end up draining that off anyways. But not nearly as much as the time I made it, and that was a crazy greasy puddle. The sound of the sizzle has changed a bit. I think that means we're coming to the point where there's almost no water left. There are still bubbles coming out of it, so there is still some water, but we're getting down to the point. Keeping the tiny whisk handy and re-stirring my sauce because with all the sugar in it, it keeps trying to like settle a bit, and I'd like it to not do that. Since I'm not serving this right up, I'm actually going to get out a storage dish. Frankly, this is going great. This is my first run at it, and it's going great. I see no major problems at this stage. The amount of oil in my pan is very reasonable, and honestly, when I push it aside and let it kind of dribble down, A, very little of it is dribbling down. B, the amount that was there a minute ago when I was dribbling it down was similar to the amount that I put in from the cooking oil. I don't think I have to drain this off. Um, There's very little bubbling, so I've drained off pretty much all of the water. So this is the stage I'm looking for. So add most of the green onion. I'm just saving a little bit. Well, add all of the green onion. Since I'm not serving this in the traditional way right now, I'm not going to save any garnish. So add green onion. Saute briefly. And here's the fun part. Get your sauce mix. Dump it in. Be sure not to lose any of the sugar that's definitely stuck to the bottom. Stir vigorously to get it nice and evenly coated. I lost a few little crumbles on the side there. We'll put those in. And saute for a few minutes until the water is mostly out of it again. If you're doing this in a nonstick, it's not going to have as much a risk of sticking to the bottom. If you're doing this in any other kind of pan, the sugar in our sauce is going to give you a risk of it burning onto the pan and sticking. But we are doing this until it's got a relatively thick, sort of glossy sauce to it. And then, before I think it's done, fully done, I'm going to push it aside and tip it and see how much oil rolls out of it. There's a good pool down there. That's what happened last time. And I don't know how much of that is oil and how much of it is our sugar syrup. This would be the stage where, if I was panicking, I would go grab some cornstarch and chuck like a teaspoon of cornstarch into this and try to get it to thicken into a sauce. What do you think? Should I panic? Or should I? Because this, I think, is done-ish, except that there's a bit more oil in the pan than I... Well, here, let me... literally see what that is. I don't know. It doesn't seem... I'm going by mouthfeel to see if it's greasy, because that was the problem with the one that didn't work. It ended up being very greasy in the mouth. I think that's good. I wasn't timing that because my timer is way over there. And then you would serve that right on top of a bowl of rice, and you'd have yourself a pretty generous meal. It still seems a little oily to me. Just holding it up. Get back to the counter. This is our first batch. It looks good, but if I dig in there, there's a little pool of oil forming in the bottom, and I don't like that. And that's exactly what it did when I did it. When I did it and it didn't work out was after I added the sauce. I checked it for oiliness before I added the sauce, and then after I added the sauce, it separated out, and I hate to try to drain that now because now it's got all the flavors in it. I wanted to drain it before, but when it was before, the fat was all clinging to the meat. Also, I don't know how to drain now that I've got this in this container. So I guess you have to drain that. It's just about the amount that I put in the pan to start with, which is annoying because it suggests that if I didn't put in that vegetable oil at the beginning, I wouldn't have this little puddle at the end. Um, hmm. I don't know how to do that. I don't have a tool. How do you skim a little bit of fat from a little puddle like that? Oh, I suppose that kind of works. I'm actually going to put it back into the pan. Because part of what's pooling there is like it's dark brown flavor juice. And that's not the part I want to get rid of. I want to get rid of this excess sort of oily top layer. Okay, I've skimmed off part of it. Now, it's not supposed to be completely oilless. I just don't want it to come across as greasy when you eat it. Let's give a little taster again. Okay. I think over rice this would work. But I think draining off that oil or some, somehow not using the oil at the start would help it. But you need some oil in order to saute the garlic and the pepper. You can't just throw garlic into a dry pan. Okay, okay. I'm going to save this one. And since I've got the other half of this beef, I'm going to cook the other half of this beef at least. So we're going to do another crack at it. See how cold my rice is getting. Oh, it's gorgeous rice. I love this rice. Mmm, rice. The rice came out perfectly. Um, and we need some paper towel. Oops, shoot. I'm going to drop my roll of paper towels on the floor. Right. I don't want to. I don't want to be gross, but I've seen several ants since I started this. And I've been trying to clandestinely squish them, but if this is cool enough to touch, I'm just going to. We're not gonna wash the pan, but I'm going to use a paper towel to mop up the majority of the oil. I think that would have worked on rice, but I want to try one where I thicken it up and see if I can get that oily layer to not be an oily layer. So, and I've got another half a ground beef that I'm going to use because I already opened the package, and I've got to use it. So let's prep another round of all of the various parts, which should be really easy. We'll start with the garlic. This one doesn't even have a blemish on it, so I don't have to do a test split. I think that was a success, honestly. I'm pleased with the first one, so I don't think I'm going to do a ton of these. I'm just going to do two. I'm going to try a different thing. I'm going to try a hack on the second one. And then, I don't know, I'll concoct an interesting finish dish. I'll make a spring roll stuffed with bulgogi. Sure, I could find a few people who would eat a spring roll stuffed with bulgogi. I feel like my title today might be putting people off, as I have almost nobody here. Again, I'm using the back edge of the knife. Never use the blade of the knife for this, but the back edge of a short knife, or back edge of any knife, is good for as a straight edge to scrape things, but it has to be the black edge. It'll ruin the blade if you try to do that. Rinse off my grater. Do things in a bit of a smarter order, I think. Move the spoon. And it honestly wasn't very spicy. You could probably, if you like spice, you could double the hot pepper allotment. If you like garlic, you could easily double the garlic allotment. In fact, I might just do that. I've got my reference recipe up in a different tab. Hi, Felix. We're doing our second pass at this recipe now with the other half of my ground beef. Um, Today's gimmick is that I'm actually writing my recipe down, and I'm practicing it by doing it more than one time. Let's see. My reference recipe says 3 cloves of garlic for a pound of ground beef. So I'm gonna throw in 2 cloves of garlic for this half pound. Um, the first one worked, but it's still got a little bit of excess oil, which not a ton. And I think putting it over rice, which is the intended way to serve it, you would hardly even notice, if at all. But I'm giving it a second go to see if I can get it to not have that. And you can see this pepper was out of its airtight. Shoot, I just dropped a pepper in my garbage can. This pepper here has been out of its airtight container for just the time it took us to make that first one. And it's already grinding less easily. Almost to the point where I want to put some salt in there to get it, just to give it an abrasive to break it down. It's coming along, but it takes a lot more effort. As it humidifies, as the ambient humidity goes up, these dried peppers become harder and harder to grind. Okay. I'm going to use the same quantities of things. So let's get my bowl back. And my tablespoon is wet because I used it to measure soy sauce. So I guess I will be using my 2-leveled quarter cup and just filling it to the 1/8 cup line. See, it's just barely spilling over the edge into the 1/8 cup. So that's our quarter cup. That's our 1/8 of a cup, which is 2 tablespoons. And our 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. So here's what the thing I'm thinking immediately of doing differently is I'm not going to add the sesame oil to the mixture here. I'm going to add sesame oil. Oh, I spilled on the outside of my molasses. Once again, I'm eyeballing the molasses. I think that was a much better eyeball of the molasses too. I'm gonna have to wash the jar of molasses so I don't get a trail of ants. So I'm not going to add the sesame oil here because I'm trying to cut back on the amount of extra fat in our mixture. I'm going to actually put the sesame oil in directly into the pan and use it to saute the garlic and the pepper. That's one tiny. Oh, I got a second clove of garlic ready, and I didn't actually grate it up. Oh well, not too late, but it's not going to be as flavorful. So I'm increasing the garlic for this one because I think that it needs more garlic. garlic sauce has the sugar, the soy sauce, and the molasses in it. I'm not putting the sesame oil in. It needs the ginger. Switch back to our... Oh, rinse the... Now, I didn't grate the ginger, and I'm not going to grate the ginger again, but I feel like it needed more ginger flavor, so I'm going to take a bit more ginger this time as well. I think I was stingy on both the ginger and the garlic on our first outing, which I'm going to correct by being not stingy on either of them this time. And again, this ginger is going to be cooked, so I don't care about the skin. And I've got a little tail from the garlic that was just trying to sprout. I'm going to just toss that in there with those guys. I'm also not just going to randomly mince this. I'm going to do a proper like cross that way. Whoop, and a whole coin on the back side of my knife. And then this way. Get nice little cubes of ginger and a couple of odd, like weird long pieces that stuck to the knife and didn't quite get minced in. That is definitely more ginger. That's more like a proper tablespoon of ginger. So happier with that, probably. We'll see how it is when it's in the thing. So I'm going to make notes of those. 1 tablespoon and 2 clove. Stick with 1 green onion, which I suppose I don't need to slice now. It doesn't take hardly any time to slice a green onion, so I can start the meat and then slice the green onion while the meat is going. Yeah, and then I'm gonna measure the sesame oil. So I had a tablespoon of neutral oil and a teaspoon of sesame oil. I'm gonna do a half a tablespoon of sesame oil right into the pan. Oh, I couldn't see the whisk. Well, I was doing this while on the previous one while I was cooking too. I was just all the sugar keeps wanting to settle, so every once in a while I come back with the whisk and just tinily whisk it up again, just to make sure it's liquidy. So I'm going to take half a tablespoon of. Let's get over to the stove. Go over to the stove. We're going to take half a tablespoon of our sesame oil directly into the pan. Which is less total oil, but more of the sesame oil. Back on medium heat. And, instead of putting the garlic in and the pepper immediately, I'm going to just add the pepper and let it start to fry in the oil as it gets started. Help give it some of that toasty flavor. Let's see, I'll put my remaining head of garlic away. Oh, God, if this road out front wasn't so noisy all the time, I'd throw this window open and have some cross breeze in here, and you could see my neighbor's house through the blind. I gotta figure out. We'll revisit that, but I need to figure out some kind of ventilation for the room here because it's warm. So medium heat. I'm waiting for these little peppery boys to start sizzling, and then I'm gonna add the garlic. So make a note of that. Increase sesame oil to half tablespoon, and decrease neutral oil to 0. Start by sauteing the pepper in the sesame oil by itself. Now, sesame oil is not a high heat oil, but, well, actually it is. It says right here on the back. It's got high temperature tolerance. Huh. I always thought it wasn't a high heat oil. Well, in that case, this is probably the better way to do it. Just skip the neutral oil entirely. That reduces the fat content of our dish by a full tablespoon of fat. You just need just enough sesame oil to have a base to fry off your pepper and your garlic in. Okay, that's a learning. We learned. We've done a learn by reading by doing some reading. Uh, okay. Pepper first, then garlic. Okay. I'm optimistic that we will have a better second one, even though that first one was pretty good. There are tiny, tiny bubbles forming around my crushed up red pepper. Ooh, and it's becoming very fragrant, not with pepper, but with sesame. Okay, I'm not looking for a toasted pepper flakes here, so we're gonna put my garlic. Garlic is here. So I'm gonna add the garlic now. Sizzled immediately on hitting the pan, which is a good sign. Saute until fragrant, possibly until foamy. It did that last time. The whole pan went foamy on us. Although we had enough oil to fully cover the pan, which was evidently too much and way more than we needed. With this little amount of oil, I don't think you could get away with doing this outside of a nonstick at this point. So this version of the recipe might be a nonstick only option. Although we are adding a glug of liquid toward the end there. As long as we take care of it, we could use that to deglaze anything that sticks. And the liquid coming out of the beef will help us deglaze this, because the beef will start shedding its water first. Our garlic is very fragrant, and I'm getting a little bit of spice in my eyes from the pepper. So that's a time to add our beef. I'm just gonna chuck straight in there, and I'm not going to experiment with Adam Ragusia's method of pressing it down. I'm just gonna do it the same way I did it and start breaking it up immediately. Okay, okay. I'm happier already because we have substantially less oil in the system than we did in the previous one. And the amount I skimmed out was honestly less than the amount that I started with the neutral oil the first time. So I think this might be a winner. Uh, I'm surprised that sesame oil is a high heat oil. I I guess I just assumed that because it's a strongly flavored oil that it wasn't, but I don't know why I assumed that. I also think we overcooked our green onion a little bit in the previous one, so I think I'm going to add the green onion after the sauce so that it stays a little fresher. One thing I can tell you about this recipe, regardless of whether it goes perfectly or not, it is a good way to use ground beef for really several solid servings of food. I would be confident in taking the half pound and serving it to making two bowls out of that. You wouldn't get a big heap of meat on top if you want a big heaping pile of food. But I think half a pound is too much for one person. I think the quarter pound is the correct for one person, and a full pound is like a family meal. I feel like a third. I feel like 1 pound is perfect for three people if you've got a family of three. Um, I'm going to take the opportunity while that is sizzling away over there to slice up another green onion. Ooh, this one's even got a still little point on it. Oh, speaking of green onions, tragic news about my green onion babies. Several of them fell over. We had a big storm last night. Several of them fell over, and I had to go get more potting soil early this morning to refresh the pots. Also, the basils I just got also fell over. Um, I lost a bunch of my soil, and some of the little onion babies uh, got broken and they fell over. So hopefully they recover. I might have a few losses. They're still fairly young. Honestly, I should have bought some green onion uh, seedlings from the greenhouse instead of doing them from my seed myself, because the seedlings at the greenhouse of the exact same plant that I am growing are 4 times the size of the ones I've got. Um, so, and mine are occupying almost all of my little pots because I have so many of them because I planted them from seeds. And there was like 100 seeds in the packet. Oh well. Okay, we're at that phase of wanting this stuff to brown and stop bubbling. It's not bubbling as much as it was at this point the previous batch, I think. Uh, and I'm going to attribute that to the lesser amount of oil in the pan. Um, I don't know if that's an accurate attribution or if I just wasn't paying attention. But yeah. So once again, this part's not any different. You want these nicely crumbled up because we want all the little pieces of beef to become enrobed in our sauce, which should, if we do it correctly, be this nice sort of glossy, unctuous coating. Oh. So, you guys ever heard of, not to change the topic, but I'm going to change the topic. You guys ever heard of Korean corn dogs or seen Korean corn dogs? Uh, they seem amazing, and I want to try making them, but I don't think I want to do another deep fry until I figured out. Well, first of all, I had to end up throwing out my uh, deep fry oil, so I don't have a go-to jug of oil because I definitely burned it last time I when I made those spring rolls. Um, so let's see if we can't try to pan fry them. That'll be coming up. I need sticks to put them on too. I don't have sticks, but boy, if you've never seen a Korean corn dog, they are incredible looking. But I don't know how to make them without doing a deep fry. So that might end up being a project that we put down the line, but certainly on my docket at this point. Um, I also I haven't done any weird things. I haven't done enough of the weirder things. I have all these weird ideas, and what I've been actually cooking mostly on this show is just normal stuff. Like this is a pretty normal dish, honestly, uh, by my standards for sure. By my personal eating standards for sure. Okay, so I need to dig up some of my weirder ideas. MLP the Chad. That's a good tip, MLP. Uh, Top tip. Pizza cheesecake was not normal, but I haven't done very many things like pizza cheesecake. I need, I want to do more sort of weird things. I'm going to say that this is ready to add our sauce to. First of all, let me demonstrate here. There's no oil pooling, which is a huge step from the previous one. Um, so I think that actually might be our solution that I was looking for. Get all that in there. Stir it around. So there was no oil pooling, and I didn't add any oil because there was no oil in the sauce, just water and sugar and soy sauce. God, I think that might have just been, if it's just that simple. Yeah, pizza cheesecake was one of the first things I made. The VOD won't be up on Twitch anymore because it was a while back, but it'll be over on my YouTube channel. I caution you that my YouTube channel is just an archive of these streams, so they're not incredibly good watches, but yeah. Um, and I had a bunch of weird ideas like that at the beginning that I had on a list that I wanted to do, and I've only done. Well, I did pizza cheesecake, but I haven't done nearly as much of that strange stuff as I had originally envisioned myself doing. Okay, let's see what this does. Okay, so there's a sauce coming out of there, but it doesn't have an oily layer on it. Well, it has a tiniest bit of an oily layer on it, but it's mostly just a brown sauce, which is what I was going for, because that should be a sugary sauce. And the green onions are looking better. They're looking less shriveled up. I would take this off the heat now. Let's see. I didn't want to. Let's have a taster and compare, and then do something fun with it, or just make it up into a bowl. I don't know. Piece of, and we'll avoid the piece of green onion because I'm just chasing the base thing. Mmm. Oh, that's so much. That's wow. That's actually a ton better. Wow. Okay. Huh. Well, changing that oil step was sure a big difference. Wow. I'm surprised at how different that is. Like the flavors, not just because I added more garlic and more ginger to this one, but the flavors of like the soy sauce and the sugar and even the beef come out much more strongly, and it has exactly the mouthfeel I was going for. Mouthfeel. Exactly the mouthfeel I was going for, not that slightly greasy mouthfeel from the other one. Oh, that's perfect. And it still has a little bit of a sauce, like a residue. Um, wow, wow. It's like this one. This one was pretty good. This one is great. And all I did different. Wow. Hmm. Well, good thing I was taking notes because now I know what I did, what didn't work, and what changes caused it to be better. You can even see just comparing them. Well, no, you can't see because you're on the wrong side because this burner is still hot. I will bring them over to the countertop cam, which is a mess. There's your difference between them. This is less brown, although this has had a brief chance to dry out, so I'll give it a stir. Um, but it's a bit less brown. You can see the oil forming at the bottom of this guy. But when I pull this aside, there is oil there, but it's staying in the pan. It's not like a pool. It's just like little droplets. The green onions are much more prominent. They got a little overcooked in this guy because I added them too early. He still tastes good. This is obviously going to taste its best right away, right out the pan, while it's as hot as it can be. But wow, just that little change to the oil made a huge difference in the actual outcome. I'm shook that such a small change was such a big difference. I'm happy. I think that's perfect. I'm not gonna, since making another batch of this would require me to open up a fresh package of ground beef. I won't be trying again today, but I have written down my notes so I can do it right and actually write up the recipe. And now the classic way of serving this is you grab a bowl like so, you load it up with rice, you take a scoop of that, slap it on top. I would get, like I said, I would get 2 happy servings out of one of these. I think you can get 4 happy servings out of 1 pound of ground beef with this recipe. Because when I made half of it for myself, I was feeling stuffed at the end, which wasn't what I was really hoping for. That dish. Now I don't want. See, now there I've got one super good one and one pretty good one, and I don't want to mix them. So I'm gonna dirty another container just to contain it, which is a little unfortunate. I have lids. I don't even have any really good lids. Hopefully it fits in there. I have an idea. This is my idea. Let's see. We're 2 hours and it's 6:30. I could call it there. Make a bowl out of this. Take pictures. I'm not going to scrape the extra oil out of the pan either. That probably might be part of what made it super oily. I'm going to get a little bit of ginger out of there. That fits in that bowl perfectly. So, you may remember from previous show the spring roll shells. Here's an idea I have that I'm going to do right now, and you can't stop me. I'm going to make these guys into spring rolls and then pan fry them, and those are going to be my finished dish. We're not doing a deep fry today. Oop. I lost a corner of one of those guys. In part because I have to use up spring rolls. We're going to use the less nice one for this. And roll it this way so that that flap flips over the top when I get that far. So I don't have the rice handy. This is frankly also an experiment that I probably shouldn't do on top of my first thing, but committed now. So they're like little burritos. I'm going to use the oilier one for this because I think the shell will help soak it up. And we're going to do a pan fry with them. So I'm going to use the same pan that I've been using. I've never pan fried a spring roll before. So I'm going to do one, see how it works. And if it's too much of a hassle, it will be the last one. Wow. Okay. So the greasy interior meat is definitely showing through the outside of my spring roll. That's certainly something. So this is another experimental test on top of our existing experimental test. And I'm using the same pan, so I'm also going to get fun exterior. So we're going to do one of these as a tester, as I just said. That's yeah, that's it passes the window test. Oh my god. It switch back. Yeah, it that wasn't the greasy spot where I built it the first time. It passes the window test. This is the oily one, so there you go. It's clearly a bit too oily. Let that pan get hot because I want this to sizzle the minute it hits the pan. Um, I've never even seen pan fried spring rolls. I don't know if it's a thing. I don't know if they cook properly. So this is our chance for a quick experiment. And you know what? If this fails, I'm just going to eat this over rice. Uh, lick up some of these drips of this delicious stuff that keeps escaping the sides of my pan. That one was a piece of ginger. Okay. The little bits that are left in the pan are starting to sizzle. So I'm going to take my roll, put it in the middle, and see what happens. It might not even be hot enough. You might have to, in order to do this, you might have to like shape it into a square so that you can have 4 sides. Because I feel like these sides are going to be hard to cook. The top and the bottom are going to be okay. Oh, by the way, those spring rolls, the previous ones, the dynamite spring rolls, they reheated really well. Um, I popped them straight from the fridge because they obviously got soft in the fridge, but I popped them straight from the fridge into the oven and then turned the oven on with them in there. Hello, Rick Samurai. You've come just in time to see me experimenting with this and telling you about the last time I made spring rolls. Let me. Yes, ground beef bulgogi. Here it is. I made 2 recipes of it. This is the slightly too oily one, and I've I made a second one. Here it is. Um, this one came out perfectly, and thankfully, I have been writing it down as I go. So I have documented what I changed and what happened differently. No, I don't have any Asian pears. Um, this is a spring roll that I have stuffed with my ground beef bulgogi, and I'm doing as a pan-fried spring roll as a sort of final experiment, just to see what it does. Not all bulgogi contains Asian pears. So that side is nice and crisp. I always do fusions. Um, come back around sometime and you'll see me doing crazy fusions. Um, or last week I was doing all Philippine food because I was in a Philippine food mood. Uh, we were just a minute ago. We were talking about the pizza cheesecake I made way back at the start of my channel. It was one of the first things I did. It was a pizza and a cheesecake. Oh, interesting. Well, uh, I'm not making Filipino food today, other than the leftover spring roll casings were from a Philippine dish I made last week, which was lumpia, which were great. I loved them. They were so good. Um, I actually deep fried those. I didn't pan fry them. Um, but I unfortunately scorched my fry oil and had to throw it out. Uh, so I don't have a deep fry set up. But yeah, I mostly do strange whatever. I do whatever strikes my mood. Honestly, today I was doing multiple attempts at this recipe for a ground beef bulgogi, um, which I'm sure it's not. I mean, real bulgogi isn't made with ground beef. That's part of it. Um, this is frying up. Oop, that side got really dark. This is frying up pretty well, honestly. I was worried this was going to be really hard to do, but it's nice and crisp on the outside. It's getting evenly browned. It's going pretty fast. Uh, it does seem a little oily. I think it might be soaking up some of the oil. I turned the heat up a little bit, which is why that side got really brown. But I'm going to pull it and take that guy off the heat and bring it back, and we'll see how it is. So again, pure experiment. I think the shell did soak up some of the fry oil. It is really hot. Um, but it's a here. Let me see if I can get the mic to pick it up. It's super hot, so I don't want to pick it up with my fingers. But like it's crisp. I don't know if you could hear that, but it's like it's got that shattering crisp feel to it that I was getting from the properly deep fried ones. My only concern is that these ends might be a little soft because they were folded in. Uh, but I'm going to let that cool off a little bit, and then I'm going to give it a taste test. And then I think I'm going to wrap up because we're approaching 7 o'clock. Um, and I've done what I set out to do, and I've done something extra. So the experiment as to whether or not I can pan fry a spring roll is more important than actually doing a bunch of them because I can just put this meat on top of the rice that I've got ready to go over there, or the rice that I've got ready to go right here. This is only a test. I also need to get some really big plastic bags because I have had to use cling wrap to seal up my extra spring roll shells because I didn't have any plastic bags big enough, and the container they came in is not reclosable. Uh, so that was a bit of a frustration. The makers of these spring roll shells don't expect you to not use the full package in one go, I guess. Uh, it's still pretty hot. This probably would have been good with some thinly sliced cabbage or some daikon, something crisp to go in there. Because at the minute, I think it's going to be a little bit heavy on the inside. I can pick it up, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. Hmm. Okay. It's very hot. It's got the shattering crisp outside. The end is a little chewy, but nothing to be really concerned about. I think pan frying them worked fine. I would say that was a success of an experiment. I don't really want to do a bunch of rolls right now because I just did a bunch of others. So I'll finish this one. And, I need a photo. We always need a photo. So, well, this is brown. So I'm going to go with that bowl. Get the rice in there. Oh, I've already got a scooper out for the rice. So I'm just going to construct a nice bowl out of approximately half of this. Top with some sesame seeds, and this is why I should have saved just a little bit of green onion. Put that in there. Ta-da! That's what I've created today. It was more of a recipe lab than a fun show today. But I think I made some good learning, did some good progress. This one came out, yeah, this is the one that came out oily. The other one came out just beautifully. It's exactly what I was hoping for. I think I've got a success on my hands. So I've been tasting this along the way, so I'm not gonna do another taste. It's for those of you who may have joined late, uh, it's ground beef with a sauce of garlic, hot chilies, ginger, sugar, soy sauce, sesame oil, served over rice. And I made a roll out of the some of the extra. So it's got some sweetness to it. It's got some heat to it. Got a lot of savory flavor to it. Yeah, yeah. So here we come once again down to it. I'm really happy how that spring roll turned out. It's nice, shatteringly crisp exterior, just like they were when they were deep fried. But I only needed a dribble of oil in the pan. And honestly, doing the sides was not very hard either. I was worried, but I would do them like this again for sure. That was easy. But we're coming down to the end of it. I haven't taken photos of this. I'm going to do that afterwards since I'm not going to take a big dig in. I'm going to drop all two of you off. Where should we go? I'm going to pull up a new tab and go searching. I'm going to mute that tab. Bear with me. I'm just going to do a quick search around, see if I can find somebody to drop off at who's actually cooking in English. I don't know any of these I don't know any of the ones that are live right now, unfortunately. So I don't know. I feel weird doing random raid into somebody, even with just two people. This one is a charity. I think we're going to this one. It's charity. let's go see what they're doing. A channel by the name of Two Girls, One Game, who's doing food and drink, and they've got a St. Jude's tag on and a charity tag on. So they're doing a St. Jude's charity cooking event. So let's go say hi to them. I don't have a specific idea in mind again for Thursday. So, yeah, hair's going extra frizzy in the humidity. So it's going to be something random again, something unexpected, and who knows? Probably something crazy fusion. Because that's what I always end up doing is just mashing stuff together and see what sticks. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I'm going to do 5 o'clock on Thursday like I was doing previously. But yeah, let's skip the countdown and go ahead and raid right now. See you next time.